Hello and welcome to the Fed Room. The Indian film industry has been through a sea change ever since the pandemic. The year 2022 has seen some great changes at the Indian box office. Southern films are ruling the roost in the Hindi belt, and some top Bollywood filmmakers are a worried lot. So, what's changing the dynamics? Is it just a phase, or will Bollywood bounce back? Well, to talk about this, I have well known film trade analyst, television host, and a highly respected film critic, Mr. Komal Nahta, to talk about it. Thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. So to begin with, what is the mahal of the Indian film industry? Where are we heading?
Well, I can first talk about the Bollywood industry. Bollywood industry currently is heading nowhere. It's in a state of panic. Producers, directors, actors, stars, writers, everybody is a worried lot. I've never seen stars feeling so insecure as they are after the lockdown. That's because once the industry opened following the coronavirus pandemic, very few films have done well at the box office. You can count them at your fingertips. Of course, the success ratio even earlier, since time immemorial, has been 18 to 20%. In a great year, you may have about 25% of the films clicking. But that 18 to 20%, we are not even talking about the 25% success ratio, that 18 to 20% has come down to probably 5 or 7%. So it is an alarming situation because big star cast, big budgeted films, very eagerly awaited and anticipated films, all of them are flopping. And simultaneously, what has happened is many South producers have started dubbing their South Indian language films into Hindi, whether it's Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, all types of films are now being dubbed in Hindi and being released simultaneously. So it's like a day and date release for even South films. And those films are doing well in India, whether it's Kantara or RRR or KGF Chapter 2 or Pushpa. These films have done so well that on the one hand, Bollywood films are not doing well. On the other hand, Southern dubbed versions of Southern films are doing so well. So it's like a double shock for Bollywood.
What do you think is the reason for the South Indian films to do well? Now, when I ask this question, there are several films that were released. For example, Godfather with Salman Khan was also released. That didn't do well. Vikrant Rona also released, across the country. It also didn't fare that well. While Kantara, a small budget film, did well. What do you think is the reason behind all of this? What could be the reason?
I think the reason is the same. Good content works. If the content is not good, no amount of star value and star faces are going to really help. So although Godfather had Chiranjeevi and Salman Khan in the special appearance, it didn't work because the content was cliched. We have seen films of this kind dime a dozen. Whereas in films like, if you talk individually, Kantara was very rooted and it was a very genuine and honest, sincere attempt at showing what prevails in the smaller towns and villages of Karnataka. And there was an apprehension that because it is typical to Karnataka, people in the rest of the country may not really identify with the story. But then one got to know that similar type of Daivyas exist in different parts of northern India also. They are known differently. So people identified with the story. They realized that in Karnataka, this kind of an entity is called a Daivya. In our region, it's called something else. So it was an honest, sincere attempt and it was fresh content. One had not seen a film of this kind. Likewise for Kartikeya 2. Again, it was a sequel to Kartikeya, but because it was deep-rooted in Hindutva, I think the climate in the country, current climate is that of Hindutva sentiments, etc. So it exploited those sentiments very well. RRR was spectacular and S.S. Rajamouli, of course, is a master craftsman. Similarly, KGF Chapter 2, KGF brand itself was big. Although that first part had done reasonably well. It was not a blockbuster. But this film, did such great business, KGF Chapter 2, that it left every Hindi film behind. Dangal was the highest grossing Hindi film. It surpassed the business of Dangal also. The only film it could not cross was Bahubali to the conclusion. I'm talking about the Hindi dub version. Otherwise, every Hindi film, whether original content or dubbed in Hindi, it has surpassed the business of every Hindi film except Bahubali to the conclusion because it had compelling content. And Pushpa, of course, it was so wonderful. His attitude, uh, Alu Arjun's attitude was so endearing that people fell for him. The music, the film boasted of great music. And of course, um, it may not be novel content, but it had everything in the right dose. It had romance, it had lovely action, it had thrills, it had attitude, it had style, it had family emotions, which gave it a longer run. So I think Bollywood has forgotten to make those kind of films which the South are actually excelling in. And that void that Bollywood film viewers were feeling is being actually catered to and is actually being filled by the Southern filmmakers.
So I have two questions from to take from this answer. First one is, I think I'm speaking to the right person because you're a film trade analyst. Now, one, is there a particular way how the normal audience can actually get to know what the actual box office numbers are? Because there are times when filmmakers claim that there's this is their numbers, and whereas film trade analysts say this is the number, there could be a huge difference. Trade analysts could be saying it's a lot lesser. Filmmakers would be saying it's much higher. So how does one find out, or how do you guys actually find out?
Actually, trade analysts also differ. There are different trade analysts who will give different figures. I'll talk for myself. We have got representatives in about 160, 170 centers of India who keep sending us collections of every film that is running in the theaters. So if at any given time there are some 20 films running, including Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, English, they send us the collections of all those 20 or 25 or 30 films. So we follow a very scientific and a very fact-based system of doling out figures, giving out figures. And as far as difference between what the producers say and what the trade analysts say, I wouldn't say there's a marked difference. There could be a difference of a few crores of rupees. And sometimes the general public gets confused because in a bid to show better figures, producers oftentimes resort to revealing gross collections rather than net collections. Whereas I follow a system where I only and only talk about net collections. I'll explain to you the difference. Gross collections is the sum total of all the money received at the box office counters. From that, the GST goes to the government. What remains is the net collections, and therefore we speak, Film Information, my magazine and my YouTube channel, we always talk about net collections because the GST part will never be coming to the film industry. That belongs to the government. So what comes to the film industry is the net collections. That net collections, that whole amount of net collections is shared between the exhibitor, the cinema wala, and the producer or the distributor, as the case may be. So that is what rightfully belongs to the film industry. So sometimes the public must be getting confused because while producers are talking about gross collections, I or people like me talk about net collections. And as I said, sometimes collections differ as you view the collections of different trade analysts. But I can't speak for the others. I'm sure there must be some ulterior motive in trying to fudge the collections or give out bigger and higher collections. We don't believe in that kind of reportage. So if people want genuine collections, I think I can, without sounding too pompous, I can only say that they ought to read or watch what we write or speak, because ours are absolutely genuine collections.
Moving on from that question, how important, okay, let me rephrase it. Filmmakers today claim that they're spending close to about 40% and some 50% on a movie's promotions. And how important is that? The reason I have a question for this, because Ponniyin Selvan and Kantara released on the same day. Ponniyin Selvan had a huge budget to begin with. Kantara was a comparatively small budget. And when Kantara was released, to be very honest, it didn't have such a huge buzz in Karnataka itself. So there were, in fact, Ponniyin Selvan had more number of theaters in Karnataka than Kantara. And then things changed. The number of theaters went down. Kantara, the promotions, it was word of mouth. And Ponniyin Selvan guys had spent a decent amount of money in promotion. So how important is it? I mean, is it really worth it? Does the amount of money spending on promotions affecting the business?
Firstly, I'll correct. It is not as if they spend 40 to 50% of the total budget on promotion. Nobody does that. The maximum producer would spend on promotion and marketing would be approximately 10 to 12%, not more than that. And as you said, rightly said, Kantara, the promotion wasn't much. It's also because the budget of Kantara was much lesser than Ponniyin Selvan 1. So obviously, the marketing spend, the expenditure on promotion has to be in sync with the budget of the film. You can't have a film that has cost some 30 crore to make, spending 40 crore on the promotion. It doesn't make commercial sense. Whereas Ponniyin Selvan, if it costs 150 or 250 crore to make, spending 25 crore or 30 crore is quite the done thing because they have spent so much on the making of the film. As far as the importance and significance of marketing and promotion is concerned, the pre-release marketing and pre-release promotion, I think it is very important because today the game is about the first weekend or at best the first 2 weeks, because 70 or 80% in most of the cases, 70 or 80% of the lifetime business comes in the first week or two. So you have to promote your film very widely, very extensively, and very concerted attempts you have to make so that you get, or your film gets a great start. That's the kickstart which every producer desires and hopes for. A film like Kantara may not have taken a great start, but because it had compelling content, collections picked up and then it went on for a very long run. But that doesn't happen always, and that doesn't happen too often. Kantara did not boast of a great star cast also. If it had limited budget, it also had average stars or just a little above average. It wasn't flooded with star names. That is also one reason why it was made at a limited budget. So such kinds of films without great face value tend to pick up by word of mouth. But if you have a huge star cast film like Ponniyin Selvan or like RRR, you cannot not spend on promotion and expect that doesn't matter if it takes a slow start, it'll pick up later. Generally, non-star cast, new star cast, or you can say non-A-list actors films, they pick up by word of mouth. So they can afford to spend limited amounts on marketing and promotion because as it is, their cost of production is limited because they don't have those kind of budgets at their disposal. But if you have taken the top A-list actors, made films at huge budgets, you better promote it, because if that film doesn't open well, it's a lost case in majority of the cases.
So again, taking a cue from your question, KGF had built a brand. The first part didn't do that well, but then it had a brand, it did well. RRR, SS Rajmouli's films always get to, they get a huge opening. Now, they were made on a huge budget. But then if you look at it, Suraj Bajratia's film, or let's say Brahmastra, they were also made on huge budgets. Do you think Bollywood can make such huge budget films and recover at this time? Is it a possibility, like Unchal or Brahmastra?
It is a difficult time through which Bollywood is passing, and therefore a lot of producers, they've started their films so they can't revise their budgets, but they've started compromising on marketing and promotion, which is not the right thing, which is not the right approach. Because if you've spent crores and crores, multi-crores and huge crores to make a film, and then you cut corners during the marketing and promotion, you are actually playing with fire. Because to recover that huge kind of budget, you need to promote your film, you need to make people aware that such and such a film is coming on such and such date, and it's a very exciting film. You need to make a beeline for the cinemas, etc. So you can't compromise on marketing and promotion after spending hugely on the making of the film. As far as your question is concerned, that can Bollywood afford such big budget films? Yes, it can. It has to concentrate on content. Public tastes have changed. The people during the lockdown, because they had no other option. They started watching content, consuming content on OTT platforms, and therefore they became more aware. Before the lockdown, before coronavirus happened, Hindi film audiences went to the cinemas looking at the stars. So star faces, star names attracted them. And even lesser content worked because they were huge fans of stars. But after 2 years of consuming content on OTT platforms, they have been exposed to world cinema, whether it is films or web series or television serials. They have got a taste of world cinema because now world cinema is available on OTT platforms with subtitles or dubbed in our own language, which we understand. So their level of understanding has gone up. Their level to appreciate different kinds of content has gone up, with a result that stars have slightly lost their value. Today, big star-cast films are not opening well, but good content films may not open well, but they pick up later. Whereas big star-cast films, if they don't open well, and if the content is not good enough, they don't even pick up in the during the week. So those are lost cases. Today, the audience has become so discerning that they'd rather watch great content than great faces. So that difference has come. And therefore, if Bollywood producers are spending huge amounts, they better concentrate on the content, because huge amounts on stars is not going to get them anywhere. Huge amounts on stars, on the making, but with great content is definitely going to hold them in good stead. So I think Bollywood producers, writers, makers, stars ought to pull up their socks, because average content now doesn't have a place in the scheme of things of cinema goers. Now they want very good content which can compete with world cinema.
So I understand that the star system has faded in Bollywood. However, star cinemas still work in South. The content cinemas work as well, but in South, if it's a big star, you have a mega opening, and you get huge number of theaters, 400 theaters, 600 screens, so on. So why do you see this difference? I mean, yes, of course, we still have content, but then the star system is still there in South.
It is there in Bollywood also, but let us put it this way. The South writers are more enterprising. South producers allow their writers a free hand. They like to experiment with different kinds of content, and they make films more honestly. Although I'm a part of Bollywood, I wouldn't hesitate in saying that films made down south are more honest. Films made in Bollywood are more compromises than honest. They are not 100% honest. A star is allowed to interfere in the story, in the script. Not so in the South. In the South, they value their stars, but they value the script, and they know the script is sacrosanct. That feeling of sacrosanct for the script is missing in Bollywood. And anybody and everybody, if he is in a commanding position, has the right to alter the script, change the script, and maneuver the script according to what he wants. That is why films are flopping. That is one big reason why films in Bollywood are flopping. Secondly, Bollywood had propagated this theory some 15, 20, probably 20 years back, when the multiplexes were just coming. They said, now multiplex audience doesn't want action fairs. They don't want these kind of films. They made their own rules, and they started believing in their own lies. It was a lie. They wanted to make different kinds of films, so they propagated the theory that action fairs now don't work. Multiplex audience doesn't want action. But then what was Pushpa? What was KGF Chapter 2? What was RRR? All these are out and out action films. And actually they have action, emotions, drama, melodrama, songs, dances, romance. They have everything. Whereas Bollywood makers started catering to one class audience, and therefore they limited their business. That is the difference between South films and Bollywood films. So stars even today work in Bollywood, but not to the extent they used to work during pre-COVID days. Whereas down south, the stars continue to work because their content is definitely superior as compared to Bollywood content. If Bollywood also starts making great cinema, the stars will get their sheen back, they will get their shine back. It is momentary probably, but the day they realize that they ought to make films with more honesty and integrity, those same stars will be in the reckoning, because there's no deadlier combination than great content coupled with fantastic star value.
I have seen that you review movies that come on OTTs as well. Now, how is OTT helping? Is it helping Bollywood or is it going against Bollywood? The reason I ask this question is OTTs were considered to be an additional source of revenue for films after the satellite rights are sold, theatrical release happens. On the other hand, there are films like Monica, Oh My Darling, which directly gets into OTT. Now, is it going against Bollywood or is it working for Bollywood?
I don't look at it this way. I really don't look at it this way, that it is against or it is working in favor of Bollywood. In the larger perspective, I would say that OTT platforms have come as a huge boon to Bollywood, because the amount of money that comes from selling OTT rights is huge. And therefore, one additional and one huge source of revenue for the producers. Earlier, producers used to release their films in the theaters, India, theaters overseas, and then they used to be picked up by satellite channels. Now there is the additional platform of OTT, over-the-top platforms, and the money that comes in from them is not small. So they have three platforms to recover their price from, to recover their cost from. One is the theatrical, India plus overseas, the other is the satellite, and the third is the OTT. Earlier, there were only two platforms, overseas and India theatrical and satellite channels. So in that sense, it's a huge boon. Secondly, I also feel that like Monica, Oh My Darling, there's going to be content made specifically and exclusively for OTT, because a lot of times good content made with not very popular stars or with newcomers, they are not given shows by cinemas, because those kind of films don't attract audiences in the first weekend. And when there is no footfall, or there are very limited footfalls in the first weekend, then those films don't get a chance. After a week's run, they are taken off the schedule, and new content is coming, because there are so many films being made, there's so much content being churned out, that constantly new films are replacing the old ones. And who's the first casualty? Which films are the first casualty? Those which don't show footfalls. So it boils down to the lesser number of cinemas in India. We don't have a huge number of cinemas like, say, in China or even America for that matter. In India, the per capita cinema is very small as compared to countries like China. And therefore, the casualties will be films made with newcomers or newer talent or small budget films. They don't stand a chance in front of films with huge budgets made by top banners of the country, starring top stars of the country. Because people also, as an audience, people make a beeline for such cinemas. If there's a choice between a film starring, say, an Alia Bhatt or a Vicky Kaushal or a Varun Dhawan, vis-a-vis a film with rank newcomers, public logic is such that they will make a beeline for the Alia Bhatt or the Vicky Kaushal or the Varun Dhawan film and keep the other film pending. If we hear great things about it, we'll see it. Otherwise, it can be consumed on OTT platforms. So now, specifically, there is content which is being made only for the OTT platform, where they don't have to bother about the first day opening, the opening day figures, etc., etc. Having said that, let me add that the OTT platforms have now become very smart. During the lockdown, they paid huge amounts of money to producers for the digital rights. But now they are insisting that if you're making a film for the cinemas, you better release it in the cinemas, because otherwise there are films made for the cinemas, and then when the content is not so promising, producers say, let's release it in the OTT and move on to our next project. But the OTT platforms have become very smart. They say, if you don't release it in the cinemas, we have to spend huge amounts, probably 10 to 12 to 15 crores to promote those films, because the awareness about those films is almost zilch. So they insist on producers that if you started this film as a cinema film, as a film meant for the big screen, please release it. Even if it is not going to work, because you will have created awareness about that film, and therefore our promotional budget will be cut down drastically. We are paying you amounts, we are paying you good amounts, but we don't want to spend additionally on promotion. So they are insisting on cinematic release. And then, of course, content which is made specifically for OTT platforms, which are greenlit by, say, a Netflix or a Disney Plus Hotstar or an Amazon. That, of course, they can't insist on releasing the cinemas because they were started for the OTT platform itself.
So you spoke about Monica O'Darling. Now, that film was made only for Netflix. The kind of promotions it had was as though, a big Bollywood theatrical release film had. How is that possible? Who does that? Is it Netflix or is it the filmmakers? Whose responsibility is it and how do they do it?
It is Netflix's responsibility because the project has been greenlit by Netflix. So the money is spent by Netflix and they account for that right at the time they greenlight the project. So if they apportion a budget for the making of the film, that this is the budget given to you, they also earmark a budget for the promotion. So right at the beginning, they apportion amounts for the making, for the cast, for the promotion, for the marketing, etc. So it's not a difficult call because they do it right at the start. It is not an afterthought. And as I said, it will have to be spent by Netflix.
Okay. So one last question. It's a question that has been spoken about in the North, in the South. Are high tickets of prices the reason for box office numbers to be low? Because we saw what happened on the National Films Day. So, there were the people came in huge numbers. Do you think reducing the film's ticket prices could change things at the box office?
I've been a proponent of differential cinema ticket pricing since a long time. You can't have the same ticket rate for a Shah Rukh or an Amin or a Salman Khan starrer as for a newcomer's film. But somehow multiplexes are reluctant to change their ticket prices. Even if they change it only marginally. But how can a newcomer compete at the same price with an A-list actor? So I think if ticket prices were brought down, it would help in augmenting the box office collections. But there is a proviso. It isn't as if the ticket rates were low, all kinds of content will work. We saw even on the National Cinema Day, where Brahmastra's ticket sales increased, the footfalls for Brahmastra increased manifold, and the film did phenomenally well on that day. A new release like Chup, R. Balki's Chup, it did not benefit much from the low ticket prices because the content was bad. So it boils down to first having compelling content, then everything else works and helps collections increase. So ticket prices are a big factor for low collections, but just because the ticket prices will be low, every film will start working or there will be more successes. I don't agree with that. The content, if it is good, low ticket prices definitely can augment the box office collections. There will be more footfalls because a lot of people can't afford, and if they have to see 4 and 5 films in a month, they have to be very choosy because they have only that much of a budget. So if the ticket prices are not brought down, instead of 4 or 5 films, they will probably see only 2 films because at that budget which they have apportioned, they can afford only 2 films. So in that sense, yes, ticket prices are on the very higher side.
All right, sir. As always, it was very informative talking to you. And thanks a lot for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
Yes, I did enjoy. Thank you so much, Shreyas, for having me over. Thank you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.